Welcome back to Fan OCC episode 12, where I take an original creature concept and recreate it using my own unique style inside of ZBrush and Photoshop. Today's concept, Monster Head, comes from a concept artist by the name of Fowler from the United States. If you enjoy this kind of concept work and you want to see more of it, then go and check out the Instagram, YouTube, and ArtStation links in the description box below. And finally, please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos in the future. I'd also like to take this moment to thank everybody for supporting me so far as well. And with that being said, let's get into ZBrush. So, inside of ZBrush, I started off with a sphere, and for this blockout stage, I just wanted to start off using some very basic primitive shapes. I find this the best method to use when creating an alien or fantasy type creature that has no basis in reality. This is because it gives me the freedom to start from scratch. So using some very basic tools like the move brush, the clay buildup, and dam standard, I'll then start to just go in and cut in using the dam standard, build some clay using the clay buildup brush, and move the topology around using the move brush. It's all very, very low res at this stage. I'm using Dynamesh to keep it low res and keeping it sort of very basic at this point because you don't want to do too much high detailed sculpting at this very early stage. Today's concept is from Fowler and it is called Monster Head. If you want, you can go and check out his ArtStation and Instagram accounts for more really cool looking concepts. He is from the United States and he does predominantly illustration work or character creature work as well. The reason I chose this artwork is because it stood out to me amongst the other ones that I saw on ArtStation, with a very bright background, white background, and then this very ominous looking creature head in the front. It just really worked really well. So I wanted to try imitate that using my own art style. So returning to this sculpt, you can see that I have actually started to find some of those key areas, so like the jawline, the eye sockets, and I've also started shaping the sort of crest area of the head and other details as well. I'm still very much using a low resolution in Dynamesh, and very soon I'll start to add some extra elements like the neck. As you can see now, I just use a cylinder to block out a neck area to add to the head. And as you can tell, I'm actually blocking out the whole of this creature using primitive shapes to begin with, and then adding the sculpt on top. This is really an excellent use inside of ZBrush if you wanted to be able to work on individual models, parts of your model at different times and not have to worry too much about changing something that's connected. So the neck, the head, the teeth, the gums, the tongue, and the eyeballs and the eye sockets are all going to be separate pieces until I'm 100% happy with how the sculpt is going, and only then will I actually Dynamesh the model together and then add some extra details. So you can see here I'm starting to do some extra detailing on the neck area, adding some of those blocked in shapes, but keeping everything separate until the very end of the blockout stage. And as we start to build up our shapes even closer to what the silhouette looks like in our creature, we'll start to move closer towards the sculpt pass stage, where we'll start to add even more detail and take a little bit more time in those key areas to make sure that they look a lot more in line with the concept. So join me in the sculpt pass or sculpt stage in 1 second. So once you're 100% happy with how your sculpt is going, you can then move into what I would call the sculpt pass. And that essentially means you go from the blockout, which is very quick, to the sculpt pass, which you then take a little bit more extra time and care on your creature. Now that you have the main shapes that you want, you can then go in with the clay buildup brush, same brushes as before, and dam standard and move brush, standard brush, trim dynamic, and go in and to start to define those shapes a lot better. So you can see now I've defined the jaw by cutting it away from the head and making it separate from the head so that I can work independently on each piece and get it to look more in line with the concept. So as well as opening the mouth up, I've also added extra geometry. So the gum line for the top teeth is going to be put in using a sphere, and I'm just going to move, rotate, use the clay buildup and dam standard and all those very basic tools to just block in a gum line. There's also at this part of the sculpt that you can actually start to add some details, very small details to your design, still keeping it very rough because you want to be able to develop it further, but you can start to add some landmark detailing areas. So you can add some muscle tone, you can add some, using the dam standard, you can cut in to the model to add wrinkles, like defining wrinkles. Don't have to go to the very fine detailed wrinkles, but like defining ones where you can actually see from a distance, you can start to add them. You can add some sort of muscle or fat tissue on top of your model to give a bit of weight, so that you can add to it later, as well as anything else that you might have missed out. So like the gum line or some eyelids for your eyes, teeth, tongue, you can add it at this stage but still keep it very basic. So you can see here I've just duplicated the eyeballs and I'm adding some eyelids by just sculpting on top of the eyeball, and the geometry underneath will become the eyelids. Just a very quick and simple way that I create eyelids, and then keeping them separate as well, because you don't want to add them to the body just yet or the head just yet, because you want to have that again, you want to have that freedom to sculpt how you want to sculpt before you start to merge things together, because that's kind of like a final decision then. And then finally, one of the last things that I did during the sculpt stage is to start adding in the teeth. Creature kind of looks a bit weird without the teeth. Once you start adding these extra elements, you'll start to see your vision come to life a bit more. Essentially what I've done is just use a sphere, or you can use a cylinder, and then just sharpen one end using the pinch brush or trim dynamic. I also normally try to keep it in Dynamesh as well, and then I will then retopo it or Z-remesh it later on in order to have better topology for the character. And here's a little tip: if you make the teeth asymmetrical in the middle of the gum and then symmetry on each side or either side, it's still going to look a little bit asymmetrical because those teeth at the front are asymmetrical. You don't want to have perfect symmetry in your model, so everything in the middle line of your model, when it comes to sculpting, is best to do asymmetrical, so that it gives that illusion of asymmetry, even though most of the geometry is actually symmetrical. Just adding a little bit more details here and there now. We're going to move straight into the detailing stage of our creature. Once we're happy with the sculpt pass and the blockout pass, and we're happy with all the other elements that we've added, we'll then move into the detailing stage. So join me in 1 minute. So for the detailing stage, I split this up into 2 parts. Part 1 was to merge all the parts together, so that's the head, the neck, and the eyelids, and keep the gum and teeth separately, as well as the eyeballs. And then once it's merged, Dynamesh it so that it's Dynameshed together, and there's no holes between the neck and the head and the eyelids. And then go in with a clay build-up brush or the smooth brush and just smooth out those areas that need to be smoothed out. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm just cleaning up the model before I retopo it or Z-remesh it to a better topology. But I'm also going in and I'm adding some extra details that I know will be projected all right, or projected onto my clean version. I'm not going in and adding any pore details or wrinkles, like really small wrinkles or anything like that, because that can be done later on. I'm going in and I'm just adding extra details where I think will be key visual areas. Typically, this is the part that I kind of dread the most, because you kind of have your model and now you got to make it look really nice and you got to make it work as a concept. The whole blockout stage and sculpt stage are the fun parts in my eyes, and I find that this part here is a bit more daunting because you have to be a bit more careful about what details you add and what details you take away, and if you lose any details as well. I typically use the damn standard, the clay buildup brush, the smooth, the standard brush, and maybe some special brushes, but typically not all the time. And then of course, stage 2 of the process in the detailing stage is actually retopoing your character, or actually first you need to duplicate your model, then Z-remesh one of them, then project all the detail from the high-res version onto your low-res version, and then you'll have a nice clean model with very high topology count, and that's the one you'll go forward with then with the extra fine details like alpha maps or wrinkle maps or anything like that. And if you feel like I'm going a little bit too fast here, then you could always go and grab a tutorial that I have online. I also have plenty free ones on my YouTube channel, but I go into a lot more detail on how to sculpt using this technique, as well as more detail in the brushes and techniques like that as well, how to use them. But for this one, I'm basically just giving you a very quick brief and overlay of how things work. So once I am happy with the detail part stage 1 or stage 2, I can then go in and I can add the very fine details. Now for this model is a bit strange because the actual concept, it has a very leathery, very skin-like detail instead of like scales or other sort of warts or cracks or anything like that. It's got a very leathery type sort of skin, something you might find like a hippo, I would suggest. So I had to kind of keep the details light basically. So I just used some very quick alphas, wrinkle alphas on the character and added them in there to give the illusion of this sort of hippo skin that this creature kind of looks like it has. Now my normal approach to creature characters like this would be to go all ham-fisted with loads and loads of alpha maps to give that texture of on the skin that I'm going for. But it's kind of nice to see other people's concepts and try to keep to it as much as possible. So sort of limiting myself to alpha maps as well as details on the creature was quite humbling and just a different approach. So another good reason to use alphas the way I've just used it on this creature or in past creatures is that it gives you something to work with afterwards. So if you're kind of stuck on how to make a wrinkle look like a wrinkle just by sculpting it, if you use an alpha and it gives you that sort of baseline sculpting pass, then you can go in with a damn standard and a standard brush and add to those wrinkles to define them even further, and thus it will help define your creature's wrinkles more, and it just gives that extra bit of detail to it. So the last thing that I needed to create was the tongue for this creature, because I kind of forgot about it. So essentially what I did was created a cylinder and I placed it where the tongue would be in the mouth. I used the move brush to create an S shape. Normally I'd use the spiral brush because it gives us a nice sort of spiral design. But for this one, I think I just used the move brush and just moved it up and down until I made an S shape. And then I subdivided, first off, I think I subdivided and then added some details along the surface of the tongue using the damn standard, you can see there, to make a cavity in the middle, and then also along the edges, as well as added some alpha maps along the top of it to give it those wrinkly kind of look to it. And with that, the detailing stage is done and we can move on to the texturing stage. So for the texturing stage, I typically use the skin shader inside of ZBrush rather than any other material, because I just find it actually helps with the colors better when it comes to rendering inside of ZBrush. And essentially what I do is I just fill the model with all the colors, base colors that I need. In this case, like a burgundy for the head. The gums will be a pink, the eyes orange and yellow, and the tongue sort of pinkish, and then the teeth sort of a white. And then after that, it's just going around with a simple standard brush with the color RGB on and filling in those colors that you see on the concept. So essentially what I try to do is keep it very simple. I don't like to use too much complicated texturing techniques inside of ZBrush. I find it a little bit of a waste of time when it comes to concept sculpting. If it was an actual model, then there could be some benefits to using real-time textures or real textures for your creature, but you can also achieve that inside of Substance or Mari anyway, so there's not much point in doing that inside of ZBrush. What I'm essentially trying to do is just give the character some color to render some interesting looking renders with. The most complicated thing, as you can see here, is just using some masking techniques to mask in the wrinkles so I can get some dirt in those wrinkles, or some alternating colors as well using the masking techniques. But apart from that, it's a very basic color pass used inside of ZBrush. So join me in the next step inside of ZBrush, which will be the posing of our character. So posing this character inside of ZBrush is going to be quite simple because it's literally just the head of our character that we have to pose. So we're just going to rotate it slightly to the right, I believe. And I'm going to use the transpose master tools to do this. And using the masking tool, I'm just going to mask out the head from the neck area and then just rotate it slightly to the right, and then hit the transpose master tool again, and it will just rotate the head for me. There are times like this which are really great when you have less to worry about in terms of rotating or moving using the transpose master tool, and it's just the head or the jaws that you have to move, and it really is a quick way to pose your character inside of ZBrush. So with that being said, I'm done posing, as you can see, and we're going to now move into the rendering stage. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick breakdown on how I use the rendering techniques inside of ZBrush in order to get the layers that I need, or the renders that I need to take into Photoshop and do the compositing later. So normally I try to pick a good sort of camera angle for my model, and then using the light tool I put the light into a certain area where I think it shows good shadow and also lights my character really well. And then I'll add the ambient occlusion to the model, and then I'll just start to render the sort of final image. Now, I have a ton of tutorials, even free ones on YouTube that you can check out in order to see how I do this pass. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just baking out or rendering out each individual layer, the shadow, depth, color, mask, and flat. And then once I've got those ones, I'll go into my materials, my matte cap materials, and I'll render out a couple of matte cap materials to take into Photoshop to enhance the compositing of this concept. And as you can see, I've got quite a lot of matte cap materials that I can choose from, but I don't normally do all of them. I do roughly about 10 matte cap materials, and I probably won't even use all those matte cap materials to composite with later on anyway. And once I've got all the matte caps I want, I switch it to a blend material, turn it to a full black color, and then it will show the highlights with the lights are, and then I could just render out a couple of light maps for the character to enhance some of those light details on our composition. And that's pretty much all I do inside of ZBrush. And you can go, like I said, you can go and check out tutorials that you can get online through my online stores, or on my YouTube channel. There are a couple of free ones that you can check out, where it just shows you the basics of the rendering stage inside of ZBrush, as well as the compositing stage if you wanted to follow up with that afterwards. Speaking of which, we'll jump into the compositing stage now. Hey guys, if you're interested in learning how to sculpt and composite characters, then visit my online stores for in-depth tutorials, models, brushes, and more. Just follow the links in the description box below. Also, if you enjoy this content, then please like, share, and subscribe for more videos in the future. Now, let's get back to the video. So once I got all the renders that I want rendered out for our model, I'll bring them into Photoshop and then just start to composite those materials, matcap materials together to get an interesting looking final image. I am not going to run through in high details how things go. I'll just cover this very basically, but essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to copy the original concept using techniques inside of Photoshop to add light, to add materials, to add some depth to the character that I have, and yeah, just try to have some fun with it. The hard part is done. The sculpting and the posing and the rendering is all done, and you can now sit back, relax now that you have the concept in front of you or the images in front of you, and you can actually spend a lot of time just working on your image, your final concept image. That this will be something that will go in your portfolio or you'll show to a client. And yeah, so you really take your time in this sort of section of the project. So once I've done all the compositing of the materials, I'll then add the background, which in this case is just going to be the white background. I'm also going to scale up the image and make it a bit more interesting to look at, give it a bit more of a centralized space within the image. And then it's just about going around and helping to make the image look like it sits with the environment. In this case, it's a white background, but if it had an environment, you add it to an environment. And I'm just trying to, at this point, copy exactly what I'm seeing from the concept. That sort of harsh white background with a very clear creature design in the middle. So it's at this stage that I go in and I start to look at each of those individual rendered layers that I have and how they work with the image. And it's a lot of back and forth and tweaks, small tweaks here and there to try to make the image work and make it look realistic as well. Sometimes you can overblow things, or you can, wash out your whole image if you work too much on it. So it's a very fine balance when it comes to doing this kind of concept work or compositing type work. And just like when I'm sculpting, when I'm compositing, I like to stay as far away from the image as possible, because seeing it from afar with all of it in view helps me see the overall picture better. The only times I'd go in for certain areas would be kind of like the eyes that you can see me doing now, or if there's some really fine details that I want to get rid of, or I want to enhance or add extra details like saliva or skin tones or whatever, then I will go in with a magnifying glass and go into those areas a bit more. But for the most part, I try to keep away from the image as much as possible, even sometimes going away from my computer and then coming back like an hour or 3 hours later or a day later and just finishing off the concept later. So some of the final pieces to go into this now will be the textures that I find online. So I'll just get some textures and just throw them all over the character just to give it a bit more of detail that I couldn't get inside of ZBrush, or if I wanted to add some sort of later on, it just gives that extra level of detail to your character or creature. And that's pretty much it. The only last thing that I'll actually do, it will be doing the adjustment layers, where I adjust the levels, the hues, the saturations, the color lookup, and anything else that has to do with the final touches of this concept. And then I will pretty much be completed with the concept. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed this series of videos where I take a character artist's work and recreating them using my own unique styles inside of ZBrush, Photoshop, and Keyshot. I hope you've enjoyed the other fan OCC videos. The last 12 months has been really exciting and really fun to do these new types of videos. If you want, you can go check out the other ones in my playlists, where I take other artists' work and recreate them in the same sort of style as this one. And this will actually be the last video of the year as well, before I go away in December, and I enjoy December with the friends and family, as well as think up new ideas for next year. That's quite difficult to do once you've pretty much done a lot of the ideas like I have. So I'm going to take that time to really sit down and think of what I'm going to bring next year, and hopefully I'll be able to share it with you guys in the coming future. And I just want to thank my Patreons and my subscribers, as well as I want to thank Hardy Fowler for letting me use his concept today. And with that being said, I hope you enjoy your Christmas holidays with your friends and families, and I'll see you next year. Take care.